All right, welcome back to Eyes Open Media. All right, so let's talk about Iran. I got two articles here for Iran. I will mention them in the report after, on the main channel, but I'm just gonna do it briefly. This one we're gonna actually read through them, and so you can see that Iran is not the holdup for anything that's going on with the Middle East and things of that nature. They're actually the ones that are trying to speed up things. Okay. Now Iran was supposed to be back on the global markets this week. Okay, this was the third week of July. They were supposed to be back on the global markets this week, and they haven't been. Why? Because the U.S. hasn't lifted their banking sanctions yet. Okay, and so they're going through the process here of trying to convince the world to force America to lift their banking sanctions. Okay, because they were supposed to be back on the global markets this week, and they're not. They're still not. Okay, because America hasn't lifted their sanctions, and the reason, one of the biggest reasons, is because Iraq hasn't lifted their value. Okay, so and America has, and the IMF and the World Bank, which is basically America, has spent too much money invested in Iraq to lift the banking sanctions of Iran, and then have the world flood into Iran and forget about Iraq, and that would cost them trillions of dollars. And we're about 13 years into this, 12 years in, so 12 years lost of time, and trillions of dollars lost that they'll probably never get back, because the whole world would have moved on, and they would have been like, whatever, to Iraq, and they would be all in Iran. Okay, so that's a lot of money that they would lose. Okay, so that's why we haven't seen the banking sanctions lifted off of Iran. I wish it was different, man. I wish America didn't have that type of strength to do that. You know what I mean? I wish that they would have lifted the banking sanctions like everybody else did, which is part of the agreement that they signed. And then Iran would have already started to raise their value and do their things that they want to do, and not have to worry about the country next to them. Okay, and if the country next to them wants to get their act together and finally do something, then fine, in the future. But a country shouldn't have to wait on another country. You know what I mean? So, and no one should have that type of power to that they have to wait on you to lift their banking, and their sanctions on the citizens to do business with this country, for them to prosper. Because I mean, no one should have that type of power. If the sanctions have been removed in an agreement by the P5+1 and the United Nations, then everything should be already off the table. Okay, but that's not how it's going. Okay, so Iran and the rest of the world is now having to beg America to lift the ban off of Iran, so the world can do business with them, because the world does business in U.S. dollars. So the U.S. is holding everybody hostage to do business with Iran, and also they're holding Iraq's holding everybody hostage because they haven't lifted their value, which will allow America to then lift the ban on Iran. Okay, so Iraq knows exactly what's going on. They understand that they are the holdup to the world, and it seems like they actually like being the holdup to the world, and they probably even, it seems like they like having Iran suffer like Iran is doing right now, having to wait on this country. So yeah, pretty interesting. So the article here says P5+1 agrees Iran banking bans must go. So as you see here, they all got together and they all agree, plus Germany, agree that the banking bans on Iran must go. Okay, so what's the holdup? Because these guys were supposed to be back on the global markets the third week of July, and here we are. Okay, and they're not. Let me make sure this is the third week of July. Well, okay. Oh yeah, it is. Okay. Yeah, July's kind of funny because it started on the Friday and Saturday, so that's not really a 1 week. So this is the first week, second week. This is the third week. Okay. Okay, so let's go down here and read this thing. It says Iran says that the so-called, so I like how they put the so-called P5+1 group of countries, the five permanent members of the Security Council plus Germany, have told it that they agreed that obstacles to banking with it should be removed. Now, the P5+1 is all coming together to tell America that they need to remove the banking, basically telling the U.S. Treasury, as you see here, it says it was clear that the message was for the U.S. Treasury. Okay, so they're all coming together. They all discuss it and say, look, this is the agreement we signed. And you need to remove the sanctions, U.S. Treasury, off of Iranian banking and the American people to do business with this country, because we signed this agreement, nuclear agreement. They did everything in the nuclear agreement. Why are sanctions still on their banking? Okay, and we all know why. I just told you that, because Iraq hasn't lifted their value. Okay, so it was a message clear to the U.S. Treasury, okay, and to make more clarification for banks and economic entities who wish to work with Iran. See, now look, the rest of the world, see, as you see here, it says a constructive atmosphere for them to work. Okay, it says Iran's deputy foreign minister Abbas told reporters after meeting with P5+1 in Vienna. Okay, so what's going on is that because America hasn't lifted the banking sanctions, the rest of the world doesn't feel comfortable in doing business with Iran. Okay, until they get reassurance for that America has lifted the banking sanctions and the restrictions off the American people, the rest of the world doesn't feel confident in doing business with Iran. Okay, so that's what's killing Iran right now, and that's the reason why you see that the rial or rial, however you want to call it, has been devalued big time. Okay, I mean, you go on eBay, the thing was doing $1 million for like at one point was doing $1 million for 188, and then now it's doing $1 million for $50. They can't wait to get rid of it because it's just worthless. Okay, it's dropping in value so bad. Okay, since maybe like late this November to the early December, it's been dropping so bad in value, it's ridiculous. So the people are just trying to get rid of it until they can get some type of notification that they're going to be banking sanctions are going to be lifted. Okay, it says Iran saw a series of economic sanctions lifted in mid-January with a nuclear deal that it had sealed with the P5+1 was eventually implemented. Now remember, we haven't heard anything from the Iran CBI governor yet on an update time frame, because remember, he did tell us in January that by third week of July they would be back in the global market economy, and their currency reform and their banking reforms would be completed. Okay, so that, here we are. So, you know what I mean? And we need an update from the CBI, Iran CBI governor, because it doesn't look like they're going to be doing anything this week. You know what I mean? Because banking sanctions are still on them. And he told us that it was going to be 6 months or less. And because he probably believed that Iraq was going to be completed by then. But, Abadi decided that he wanted to be a delay machine and delay things and not give people purchasing power in the first half. So it is what it is. So they're still waiting. I want to see an update from the CBI governor, hopefully sometime this week, so he can give us a new time frame. He might say by the end of the year. He might have to give a new time frame between now and to the end of the year that they're going to be lifted off of sanctions. Okay. Let's see here. Let's move on to this article here. Okay, so this article is the private sector waiting for single forex rates, and this is also Iran. Okay. Says underlining the importance of exchange rate unification and new opening in international banks, referring to the 100 deals made with foreign investors in this industrial sector. Okay, so Tiny, okay, said We have reviewed the list of deals made in the industrial sector and found that most of the agreements were made with state-owned companies and the public sector. The private sector is barely represented in the 100 deals. Okay, let's go down here. Now, remember, they were waiting, the private sector is waiting on the single forex rates. Yeah, because they told us that when they got to single digits that they were going to be able to then start to reform their currency. Okay, so they were just at 9 point, I think it was 9.8, 9.7. So they're in the single digits. So I don't know what the private sector is waiting on, because the last report we gave, they were at 9.7, 9.8. So they were in the single digits. So I don't know what happened. I don't know if the public rating of 9.7, 9.8 is different than the private sector's rating. I don't know. It says for large scale money transactions, we need such measures, he said, and that is while foreign investors do not see any motivation to import hard currency to Iran, because it would be calculated at a lower official rate and immediately lose its value. On the other hand, lack of effective banking connections increase trade costs, which again does not bode well for foreign investors. So basically, because of the rates and stuff like that, foreign investors are going to be losing money if they put money in Iran. You see? So this is why it's important that America lifts the ban on their sanctions and also the ban on the American people, because it's going to then lift the value of the rial, okay, and put it to a spot where it can actually be beneficial to people to come in, and also I guess the private sector can launch their single digit rates, and people can come in with confidence. Remember, they just did the banking reforms, and they also did the brand new oil contracts, and I think they're still doing more oil contracts now. Okay, so America needs, they're talking with America, they're talking with the P5+1 to get the ban lift off of them, and that's going to be very important. And right now the U.S. Treasury doesn't want to do that because Iraq still hasn't lifted their value, and it looks like, unless something drastically changes, it looks like Iraq is going to, when Iraq lifts their value, that same day, Iran will be lifted off of sanctions. That's what it looks like to me. And this is probably the reason why we are now hearing more and more talks about banking transaction fees. We heard talks about meetings of removing restrictions off their banking. We heard talks about international banks doing business with Iran, and we're hearing talks of the P5+1 accepting that Iran's ban needs to be lifted. So we're hearing all these talks because the reason why is because they're preparing Iran, so when Iraq finally does lift the value, sometimes between now and God knows when, Iran will be able to be lifted the same day. Okay, so, and they might want to hide. I mean, it looks like if that's the case, then that they might be trying to hide it from the American people on that day. I don't know. But I believe that once that value is lifted, then Iran's banking sanctions will be lifted the same day. Okay, it could be July, it could be August, it could be September, it could be October. You know what I mean? But a lot of people are like, it's gonna be before the elections. You know what I mean? Because it's gonna give one party the upper hand when they see that Iraq is finally completed. Okay, so I'm pretty sure that's gonna give the Democrats a greater hand if Iraq is completed and Iraq is celebrating. Okay, and then they secretly lift the banking sanctions off of Iran as the media turns to the celebration going on in Iraq. Okay, which is going to probably help the Democrats in the elections, right? So, okay, so we'll see when that happens, and thanks you guys for listening. Eyes open, and Iran's ready to go. Just waiting on Iraq. Peace out.